All right. One more sec. The exact atomic time has not arrived yet, and there it is. Welcome to Real Humans, Great Souls. Real Humans, Great Souls. This is the podcast, and I'm yours truly, Professor Johanna Sophia of Johanna's Raw Foods and Coaching, and of the Rawsome Life Project, and of the Real Humans Great Souls podcast. And today I just decided to attack a topic head on that I've been so often accused of doing or tackling or throwing out there, namely that everything is interconnected and that I talk about so many topics, so many subjects, so many things that are of interest to me. But it's not just that they're of interest to me because I'm curious, but because I see all the interconnections between all these topics. I cannot dive into one subject without thinking or being aware of all the interconnectedness with the entire planet, the entire human race, the entire human history, as far as we know, and beyond. And therefore, this is called crash, and then everything has to change. And of course, I'm talking about crash because so many people are expecting at least a recession, a financial revolution. The powers that be would like to grab a new hold on what is the financial world by introducing centralized systems, all digitalized, etc. And therefore, we're tackling the topics planet, nature, biology, health, housing, transportation, finance, psychology, education, community, and honesty and love. Now, you may notice that I'm avoiding certain terminologies because I don't want to trigger anything. But of course, some of those items that I just mentioned could also be interpreted differently. Just don't want to have the glare in the screen. All right, let's start. Planet. Let's start with the big picture. Now, the planet has been suffering for the last 100 years really severely. Before that, it started with the industrial age, probably, but not really. Really severely ever since the invention or the use of crude oil and the manufacture of chemicals, we'll talk a little bit more about that later, but also, of course, the manufacture of a power that now I always argue makes us entirely, us, the human race, makes us entirely responsible for this entire planet. Entire, because we have created these weapons. And now it's not just nuclear, now it's electromagnetic, etc. as well. We have created weapons or means, if we don't call them weapons, means to destroy the planet multiple times over, meaning to really eliminate all life on planet Earth. That's an amazing feat when you think about it, right? So therefore, I argue we can now no longer relay the responsibility or the fixing or healing to gods or nature, because we humans have created these means, and we have the buttons that certain people would have access to pressing if we go to those weapons, those powers, those technologies that can destruct the entire planet multiple times over. Of course, once it's destructed, there's nobody left to destroy it all over. But I don't know why we've created so many of these things that would be sufficient for doing it multiple times over. That alone to me tells you that humanity, in its drive to own, to possess, to control all of the planet, we have gone way overboard with what we've done to the planet. And let me not miss some of the notes that I have here. The awareness of this is, of course, not just in my little mind or big mind and brain, but we have seen these documentations in, just to name a couple, in the Zeitgeist movies, in the latest being The Great Taking that you might want to look up, in multiple demonstrations of, there was a movie that was just so depressing that, it wasn't really successful. In the 1970s, I think, showing the aftermath of some people surviving after a nuclear war, right? It was just everybody slowly was dying and there was no happy ending whatsoever. It was just devastating. And I remember seeing that and I was thinking, yeah, we can't really make such movies because it's against the human spirit to want to destroy itself and die in these miserable ways that death from nuclear radiation produces. So that's the planet. We have created a situation on planet Earth that is not sustainable. Not sustainable. We have created the poisoning of the waters, the air, the soils with forever chemicals that we cannot continue to perpetuate because nature does not have the power to override those kind of toxicities and technologies, as are the nuclear explosions and the radiation from those explosions and the effects of pesticides, herbicides, and all the other chemicals that we have produced for multiple purposes, including plastics production and clothing and furniture and you name it, right? So we've created such toxicity on the planet with these forever chemicals. I believe I come across this figure again and again, over 80,000 forever chemicals we have created. So it seems to be a tipping point that we're going to reach within the next couple of decades that call for doing everything differently. It's the Great Taking explains the financial angle of it, which I will go into it a little bit later. So that means that we need to look at, well, why is this not working? Why can't we keep doing this? Why can't we keep making poisons? Because after all, we're making the poisons out of crude oil and gas and coal products, which are coming from the earth, but they are non-renewable in the first place. meaning that they will take thousands or millions of years to be renewed, right? When you think of the oil deposits that we think are created from plant life millions and millions of years ago. But that's just our projection. We don't really know. In any case, these are non-renewable products that we have created, and they are non-biodegradable products that we have created. Wherefore, they're called forever chemicals. So we cannot continue to produce more of them because we only have one little planet. We don't have another planet in reserve or multiple. The planet does not have babies, and so we don't have the next generation that can be a nice home. Don't you like that idea? That just came to me. So if the planet could reproduce, right, then maybe we would have a chance. But the planet, though part of nature or allowing for nature to exist, cannot produce another planet. So nature has only this one planet to live on. And all of nature, of course, can in and of itself renew itself unless we stifle that process. And that's what I was just describing, is what we have done. And if we continue to do at the same rate or at an increasing rate, will lead to the inevitable demise of life on planet Earth. That has been clear for a long time now. And therefore, we have invented other avenues. So a little bit more about nature, and maybe we need to acknowledge that nature on this planet only works one way. So if we include in nature the rhythms that are connected to the planetary rhythms, to the rotation of the planet, to the sunshine and the seasons and all those things, they're all rhythmical, right? We have the moon cycle, for example. Plant life orients itself along the moon cycle. Even human life, menstruations, for example, typically have a 28-day cycle, right? And there's variations, but the average, the norm, orients itself along those cycles that are part of nature. All of nature connects, therefore, with the universe and the rhythms of the universe. And if we break that connection and think we can override those connections, then we suffocate life on planet Earth. Life on planet nature also has the quality of repairing itself and renewing itself, reinventing itself, adapting to altered constellations and or happenings on the planet, such as we think comets hitting the planet. So it has the quality and the ability to renew itself and readjust to the new situation. Now, some people could argue, well, why don't we think then that nature can adjust to this load of chemicals? Because we have shown over and over that there's a breaking point at which nature cannot. Just as when we put poisons into our body or into a plant, or there is a certain breaking point at which the plant or the human body cannot override that poison, right? That's why people get poisoned in the old days with arsenic and God knows what, mercury, etc. And today with all kinds of chemicals that that will lead to the demise of this ability of nature to renew itself. But nature is also naturally cyclical, meaning that there's always birth, thriving, and demise. And the demise, if in natural cycles, will decompose into fertilization of the next cycles. I've talked about that before. So focusing a little bit closer, we get to biology. What does biology do? It self-generates on all levels. It self-regenerates all the time. And when we try to stop that regeneration of life, for example, when we sanitize the air in a what is called a clean room, right, which we need for certain technologies, nanotechnologies, etc. We sanitize that the air to a certain extent, meaning that we kill all life in that air. Then life can't be in that air, right? Then we can't be in that air. Humans cannot be in that air. Then we have to be in a hazmat suit, breathing oxygen from a tank, so that we can even live in that air. In that, well, it's no longer air when it's sanitized to a certain extent. Of course, it's also not quite vacuum, but yeah, it's air that is dead, right, when we sanitize. So there's this big misunderstanding that somehow nature is dangerous. And of course, there are poisons in nature, yet we can be knowledgeable, we can be educated about those. Of course, in all natural communities, that is still the case, about that ability of avoiding or recombining and turning maybe poisons into medicine. But yeah, that can be dangerous too, as has been done in the past. So then we get to, what is this thing called health? When nature functions well, we call that healthy, right? When animals are not, let's say, limping or have been maimed or have been bitten by mosquitoes to an extent that they have been, that their health is failing, their what we call immune system is failing. And of course, that goes for us humans too. So we get from biology to health, and health then is when nature can live its natural cycle to the best of our ability, of nature's ability. So when we shift our thinking, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more, when we shift our thinking toward nature is our enemy, we need to be wary, we need to worry, we need to sanitize and kill off nature, as opposed to collaborating with nature. And of course, making the path that we can walk so that we don't step on a rattlesnake that will bite us and we will die. all of that is, of course, a play that would be healthy if we knew the rules of nature, right? So when nature is allowed to be at its best, we are healthy. When we think nature is a dangerous thing, then we start killing it off, killing the water by making it unalive. I suppose I'm not supposed to use the word kill, right? I'm supposed to use the word unalive. So when we unalive the air and the water by using chemicals like chlorine and fluoride, and which are, again, in and of themselves, poisons. They are, if you will, antibiotic, meaning against life. So then we think we're fending off the dangers of nature, whereas we could collaborate with nature and allow nature to produce the best outcome in our body and in our environment. So these are just really basic principles that we should understand, and again, how it all interconnects. Now, of course, our health is not just produced by the healthy nutrition that we put into our body, the healthy water, the healthy air, leaving everything as clean and natural as possible, but also by our physical environment. In what makes us humans, I talked about that, right? What makes us humans is the fact that we can create, that we are creative. And therefore, we create the shelters that we live in, for example. So let's look a little bit at that item. I call it housing here, but any kind of sheltering that we create can either work with nature, help us be in harmony with nature while not freezing to death, because we can't really live in cold climates without shelter and heat producing environments. Or we can work against nature and burn off everything in sight so that we can have heat. So in housing too, we have the possibility to use nature to heat the house. We can start with the geothermal temperature 6 foot under that is indeed providing basic 55 degrees Fahrenheit temperature, or what was that in Celsius? It is 55 minus 32, something like that. So it is, no, it's I think 12 to 15 degrees Celsius. Look it up, check it out. I forgot what Celsius it is. But yeah, you have earth temperature, then you have the ability of the sun shining through glass, which is basically sand, melted, right? And for that, we do need heat and flames, but we can produce heat from the sun together with the warmth from the earth and produce heat that we can store, for example, in hot water tanks and or other kind of environments. And we can heat and cool our homes without needing to burn fossil fuels. That's and or wood trees and or any kind of or coal. There's one particular inventor, Mike Sykes, who invented the inertia system, by which there's an envelope around the house, meaning a double wall, and you use geothermal and the heat from the sun on the south side and the hot water tank to keep your temperature always hot enough so that you could siphon off some of that heat at any time you need it by leading it through water pipes and floors, and keeping the house at a steady temperature as you like it, whether you like it at 72 or at 65 or whichever you will like. So nature provides all those elements to keep us sheltered. And of course, there are other versions too. If you live in a hot climate, you can produce what are called earth ships, right? With dirt and or old, now we have all these tires lying around. So that an insulation from the heat is created, yet light comes in through, yeah, you have seen the earth ships, whether one uses glass bottles or glass windows in those earth ship houses. It's a beautiful concept too. So yeah, we have plenty of technology that provides us shelter, that warms us without interfering with the natural environment, without exploiting the finite resources. Now, why are we using up all the finite resources? Because we live in a system, and we're going to get that in a minute, get to that in a minute. We live in a system that needs to function by way of ownership and exploitation always needs finite resources that you can own, right? All right, so we come from housing and shelter to the interconnection with transportation or travel. How do humans travel across the planet? And it is my understanding that humans have traveled on ships and rafts and even through the air thousands and thousands and millions of years ago, because it is part of our being that we are capable of creating technologies. It is the inventor, the creator in us that makes us human. And I think our linear system, there are no straight lines, was something I picked up recently in one of my posts on social media. And there is no linear development either. There are all these dynamic developments, and now we explore this thing, and when this thing finds its demise, we're going to explore another form of living on planet Earth. And so what do we do with transportation? Let's move just to modern day transportation. It has long been known, in fact, Nikola Tesla was probably not even the first one to invent the siphoning off of energy from the atmosphere, from the radiant energy that is in the air, in the ionosphere, and right here around us, and emanating from the earth, to drive a motor, to roll the wheels, to create electricity, to all kinds of things can be derived without burning fossil fuels. But of course, it is not as easy to say, I own that air or I own that sunshine. You can't have it, right? You have to pay for it. But it is possible to own oil wells and gas pipes and coal mines, etc., and produce the machinery that constantly requires the population wanting to use it to pay. And wherefore we get to the next topic. So travel is possible using those energies. And there have been presentations in Congress and other places whereby these technologies lead to even more exciting flight possibilities, etc. So without finite resources, we can, if we allow that to be used, we can use energies that are naturally always there, meaning renewable, I suppose, but we don't have to wait 50 years for trees to grow back, and we certainly don't have to wait 1,000,000 years for oil to grow back or for gas to reemerge. But we can use these energies right away. They, however, empower the individual human being to just use the energy around them without having to go to a station that somebody owns and where you have to put in your payment in order to drive for the next so many miles, right? Using your vehicle, again, that has built in what is called planned obsolescence. It must rust, it must fall apart, it must burn up oil in the motor, and all of these things are a must in a society where ownership and power gain is linked to exploiting the population and the resources. All right. From transportation, we get to finance. And what I just mentioned about the resources, of course, is our financial system. And our financial system is tightly linked with the feudal system, with the power structures of empires, right? It allows a few to hold the entire power of humanity, over humanity, if you will, in their hands. And hardly anybody can escape except for the few, and even they are now no longer existent, few indigenous peoples in very remote Amazon forests or on islands. But I think there's only like 2 or 3 little spots left where on the entire planet where the system that the empires impose upon humanity, and it is now the financial empire imposed upon humanity, where those structures have not grasped and owned the people and their life structures. What is this financial system that we have? It is not only ownership, but it is also debt-based. So if I am a Caesar or the King of England, I own you because you owe me. Because every pound, dollar, gold piece that you have is really a debt. That's the system that we've developed for the last 5,000 years approximately. I think the first monetary systems arise in old Sumeria. Is that the correct name? And then Mesopotamia, those eras. Now, however, we have not only the financial system as debt, but we have debt as an asset that can be sold to create bigger debts. So when I borrow money from the bank, the bank creates the ninefold debt of what I borrow. Let's just say I borrow $1,000. The bank writes in its assets 10,000, or if we say ninefold, yeah, it's 9 to 10-fold. So let's just keep it simple. The bank writes 10,000. I only get 1,000, but the bank now has my debt as being valued at 10,000, because at one point it has created the system that, because I'm paying back interest and I'm paying back over a long period of time, and all kinds of other things may happen. There's devaluation of the money, so I need to be paying back a lot more. I mean, we don't really think we need to pay back tenfold, but that is literally what the system is. So the bank books 10,000 as their asset that they now own because they gave me 1,000 and I have to pay that back. But now they have this debt package and they sell it to others. So more money, more fictitious money is generated by selling the debt and then betting on whether the debt is going to get bigger or smaller or be at a higher or lesser value. So we create this entire fictitious money system that goes on forever, so that somebody was saying the other day, we have 63 trillion dollars in fictitious debt that can never ever be paid back. So what does the system do? Well, traditionally, the system creates destruction. Because when you want to have more, and there isn't more to be had, you have to crash so that you can start over to get more. And of course, in that crash, the opportunity arises to grab more, for the powers that be. So therefore, again, every time you reach a tipping point, you have to crash and start over. Now, how do you crash $63 trillion in debt for which there is no real counter value on the entire planet? It's more than the planet's GDP or something like that. What do? You crash the system and say, okay, from now on, we're going to do something completely different. We're starting clean, because when even wars don't produce enough crash, then, yeah, we have to come up with another kind of crash, right? The big financial crash, or with a crumbling, or with a pre-crash takeover and revamping the system so that it doesn't look like a crash. I think that's also a possibility, that it won't look like an actual crash like 1930, but that it will look like, we just don't do this old system anymore, so we just wipe the slate clean. Everybody's assets are no longer their assets, and we start from scratch. And now you can get something via this system on your digital device. Now, why do I think that system can't work? Number one, electronic systems can crash, can be cyber hacked. There has just been, and we didn't hear much about it in the USA, there's been a crash of half a city, a big city, Mainz, in Germany, on December 8, for example, where there was total blackout. This has been, I have not found the exact analysis. There's probably not going to be an exact analysis, because do we really get to the truth in these matters? But the entire parts of the city, including some villages outside of Mainz, were out, blackout. Now, if you needed to acquire something or get something or buy some food or something like that during this blackout, and you didn't have any cash, right? Or the store didn't have a physical door to open because it could only open electronically, then you just were going to starve during that period of time, right? So, or if you're in a sealed room where there's no airflow and the air conditioning stops because it has no electricity, or all these systems that we have created can be turned off like that with a blackout, with electricity failing and or systems failing. Of course, electricity means also computers failing, etc. Now, some systems will have a little backup with generators or with batteries, but that's not going to run the city, right? The traffic lights were dead, everything, the pumps, the ATM machines, the banks were closed. It actually happened. Yes, it didn't last very long. It lasted, I think, 6 hours and 24 hours in some places. But it happened. Think about that. We are now so tied to our electronic devices, right? So choke held by this electrical world that it becomes impossible to live when those things crash. And they will crash for all kinds of reasons because we overburden the system. Because electricity needs to be created using, again, the same resources that we want to stop using, right? We make electricity using oil and water and gas and coal and a bunch of other things to produce. And even solar panels, we need enormous amounts of heat to produce the panels. And because we live in a planned obsolescence system, solar panels have to die at some point, and then we can't dispose of them. They contain, again, toxic elements, they don't break down, etc. So all of these systems that are in a world in which we believe that we must own and can't share unless somebody gives us, indebts themselves to us, gives us their money, meaning indebts themselves, cannot continue because, again, we have only one little planet. So for the finance system, we also have a wonderful solution that we can implement immediately if only humanity were ready to switch the mindset. And we're going to talk about psychology next, but finance is based on the zero-sum system in which if I have $1,000, you must be in debt, or somebody must be in debt for $1,000. So if we both have nothing, we're at zero sum, right? Now, if I have 10,000, another person must owe 10,000. If I have $1 billion, another so many, maybe millions of people must be indebted for that billion. That's the system we have. And of course, with these distances becoming greater and greater between the multi-billionaires and the billions people who have next to nothing, this zero-sum becomes next to nothing, meaning also are entirely indebted even to put food in their mouths, to breathe air, to drink water. We have commodified water. I mean, think about that. Next is going to be air. Next, we're going to have bottled air, right? We're going to buy bottles of air because somebody owns the air in our house. Or it's so poisonous that we need extra oxygen providers. So yes, that's the financial world we're in. But the system that I'm promoting and want us to all look into is called gradido, made out of the words gratitude, dignity, donation, in which people exchange donations, if you will, to have means of exchange. We don't need to go back to bartering completely. But even those means of exchange will be devalued regularly, as in the cycle of nature. So gradido is a monetary system, a financial system, an economic system based on the principles of nature, in which everything reaches a value and then finds its demise. And you have to create more to keep the cycle going and create and diminish the value, or find the demise of the value. Or you could say extinguish the value, if you will. So look into gradido.net. Yeah, gradido.net. Because that system leads us out of the needing to own more and more and more and more, and needing to crash this way around, I should really say, right? And then crash so that things can start over. So the gradido system allows for the avoidance of crashes, allows for the avoidance of wars, allows for the avoidance of competitiveness to the death, so to speak, right? There can be productiveness, but not in order to suffocate another human's or another group's efforts to be productive. And that's what we have at the moment. That's what competition does for the most part. It attempts to extinguish the other person's productivity, right? Because I want all of this monopoly, if possible, because ownership defines us. Okay, this leads me to, and I have to hurry up and get this done. This leads me to psychology. Why psychology? Humans, to this point, for the last so many couple of thousands of years, have defined ourselves by what we have instead of by who we are. Now, of course, the what we have then defined who we are, i.e., we have a castle, therefore we are a king, or the other way around, we are a king, therefore we have a castle. But the definition is still showing to the world what we have, right? I have 5 cars, that's why I am important. I have this amount of money in the bank, therefore I am important. So ownership defines who we are, more so than humanity, the being that we are. Now, in some cases, of course, we have great examples of humans who have already lived not by what they have, but by who they are. My father used to love the stories around St. Francis, who lives with the animals and creates all this peace among animals and peace among people. And so there are examples, but we come into an age now where we more and more define ourselves and judge ourselves and each other by how we are, by who we are as a being, as a human, as a intentionally well-meaning, compassionate human, which of course we are by nature, but we are groomed into this ownership mindset. So how do we get to the much more natural mindset, which is that we are by nature compassionate? I was just hearing somebody else saying that again. I use the example when a child looks like it's going to be run over by a bus, our instinct is not like, oh, let me watch how that blood squirts. Our instinct is, oh, let me help. Right? And this person was saying, an old lady trying to get across the street does not make us think, oh, let me see if she makes it or if somebody takes her, right? Our instinct is, let me help that lady across the street. And that goes in the jungle just as much as on the busiest streets of New York City. In fact, I've always been amazed how incredibly helpful New York City's residents are. We think this is the biggest city or the most famous city in the world. And my having had an office on Park Avenue for 16 years, and of course, also having studied at Columbia University right in the midst of all of it, there is so much callousness, I suppose, in the upper echelons of society. But when it really comes down to the population, there is so much compassion and just humanity, even in the busiest, perceived to be dangerous, whatever city that is New York City. So the psychology or the makeup coming out of human nature would have to be, we are wanting to be good with each other. Therefore, we are wanting to be in community, in correspondence, in communication, in collaboration with each other. And this competitiveness is an artificial imposition in my understanding. And if you follow me, we don't naturally have that thing that wants to kick somebody else down so that we can win. That's why the whole world was so enchanted when this, I think it was a marathon runner, saw somebody fail, somebody who was in the first position, fail to understand where the finish line was, right? And slow down. And the second person takes him by the arm and pulls him and pushes him across the finish line because that person deserved to be the winner, even though he put himself into second position where he would have had the opportunity to win. That's really human nature. It's not, let me trample on this guy and let me take the win. And I find that amazing that it's over and over. We have all these examples in everyday life. And of course, as a mother, we have this every minute of the day, right? Whether we are having children that are just infants or whether they are adults and have their own children, we remain this compassionate human being that wants well for others, for the next generations. That is our nature. And that is also why it is so important that we women get more into the world, because we want to protect the environment, the planet, the nature, because we understand that without it, there is no life for our children and grandchildren. There just is not. We have to embrace the community. We have to realize that we are all needed to make up the fabric of a village, of a city, of a block, of a school. And I really need to get to education now. We can hardly finish this whole rundown. So in order to bring forth this understanding of humans identifying by who we are as opposed to what we own, our entire educational system needs to change, right? And yes, I talked about that in my last podcast. Please look it up. Why education has to change and how. But can you now see that in order to allow for that individual compassion and individual contribution, wanting to contribute to the community and wanting to share really in the community and in life and with nature and in nature, in collaboration with nature, needs to be the educational system of the future. And that means it cannot possibly be the military approach that we have had for the last 100 years. Yeah, a little more than that even. But really, the Prussian military is not that long ago that it has impacted what then became the Rockefeller school system. You know, I don't want people to think I want workers, was his expressed desire. And of course, he put millions and millions of dollars into all the public school systems and the higher education systems, all with that very expressed goal of saying students sit and are still, and they are instructed, and they regurgitate what they are instructed only to the extent that it is allowed and provided. And of course, we have that today in censorship of all kinds, because it is new to humanity that we are actually, in spite of it all, able to think. Huh? Oh my God. Because we are creative, and because this is the era in which we come into our own individuality, in which we come into the understanding, to go back to the beginning, of our relationship to the planet, to the entire life on planet Earth, and how it all interconnects. And while many people go blindly with their blinders on through their careers, there will always be a point, especially for us women and mothers, where we do see the interconnectedness. Also, when we have maybe a child that is not the Harvard student and the super performer, but that has other qualities. When we have a Down syndrome child or a child with other challenges. So therefore, education has to change in allowing all parts of humanity to come together and growing the creative forces so that we can create this new era, which is absolutely necessary because, like I said in the beginning, the continuance of the destruction and poisoning of the planet leads to the demise of humanity and the rest of life on planet Earth. They always fantasize that there'll be some amoeba and the whole process starts all over with, the bacterium and then the next and the next. Yeah, only that I actually don't think that is real. So what is more real is, to me, that we might just have to incarnate somewhere else, but I don't know where that would be. I don't think we have discovered that. And this planet isn't done. We, according to all the mythologies and the wisdoms of older indigenous cultures, whether it's the Hopi or the Mayan culture, we are only just entering the 5th of 8 phases of humanity on planet Earth. And it's exciting. So let's all help build this new organization on planet Earth in collaboration with nature. Let's form, and to get to the last 2 notes on my list here, let's form intentional communities, not communities because genetic bloodlines or because clans or because whatever it is, religions and nationalities, but because we want to be together with these humans and we want to create communities that are joyful and enjoyable. And in order for that to work, we need one more element, I think, not just love, but we need honesty. I think it's the most difficult, and I'm using this word honesty as opposed to other words, because it gets to the core of the fact that, of course, there is never just one truth. There is always this perspective and this perspective and that perspective and this perception and that perception and this perception, because we all have different minds. And when we honestly discuss and exchange what is happening in our different minds, that's when we get to the next level of wisdom and understanding and inclusiveness. And that, of course, means inclusiveness of all different peoples without needing fanaticism of each of these differences, right? I'm not promoting that we go back to insular cultures that then only kind of merchant communicate with each other in terms of exchanging goods, but that actually have a human to human connection. You can't really be a fanatic and have real honest communication with others that are not in your particular fanatic field. So, therefore, the last item on this podcast is honesty and striving for more honesty, for more perspectives, for more, at least attempting to understand. People say walk in the other person's shoes. Of course, that is not possible unless you literally spend a few days in a gold mine in South Africa where the slaves are driven, or now in a cobalt mine in the DRC, Democratic Republic of the Congo, where children and women with babies on their back dig with their hands cobalt that is toxic all day long hours, so that we all can have an extra cell phone and an extra smart this and smart that and smart the other, and electric cars, etc., which we don't need because energy is everywhere. We don't need all this technology and exploitation. That's really the big message. When we connect all the dots and understand that humanity is at this breaking point of poisoning the planet and unaliving the oceans and the air to an extent that we can't breathe or swim or have fish in the ocean, which of course affects the climate and all of the other things as well. When there is too much toxicity, life ceases to exist. So we all can play our part. And while I'm not promoting to go back to the cabin in the woods, we can have technology and make it earth compatible. We can have communication. We can have transportation. We can have beautiful houses, and we can have all kinds of exchanges, clothes and furnishings and music. And of course, all of that I've talked about in other podcasts as well. But I needed to put this out there that for me, I always have to interconnect as much as possible. And of course, there's a lot more to interconnect. And I look forward to telling me what I missed in this podcast. So I'll be happy to hear from you what you think I should have included in this particular overview of when the next financial crash happens, and it is about to, whichever form it will take, there is an extra opportunity to implement these new systems, one after another or all at the same time. We will see, but we will be able to do more of the new way of doing things. I look forward to hearing from you guys, and connect with me at johannasrawfoods.com or at rawesomelifeglobal.com. I am easy to find searching Professor Johanna Sophia or Prof. Johanna Sophia on the interwebs. And I want to talk to you about all these interconnections and the post-crash opportunity. Ciao for now. This has been Real Humans, Great Souls. Let's show what we can do as real humans and great souls. Understanding, implementing. Ciao, everybody. Love you guys and love this little planet. It's just so beautiful. Let's keep it. Bye.